Anyway, we're going to start this off with FHP, showing you the different devices, where you can get them, and basically what it's like to put your hands on it and stuff like that. So I'm going to yield to FHP and let him get started on that. And I'll cover the installation of the software and how to control it on a computer in the second half. So take it away, Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to start this off and go to some of the beginning things about this, what it is and where to get them and the different kinds of them. And because I think that's probably everybody's interested in where to get one. I'm trying to move my page too. Okay, my favorite source for a lot of things is either Gigaparts or R&L. R&L I've had very good luck with, and now I gotta see if I selected this, now I have to make it share. Okay, R&L is where I like to go for stuff. It's R&L Electronics. If you get there, just put VNA in this search box. You don't say micro, you have to nano, you don't have to say anything, just VNA, and this page will come up. This is a book they sell about it. This is a real high class one that goes in with a computer, and this is one of the first. There, a lot of them are out of stock right now. You can find out when they're coming in or one of the other ones. The ones that I would recommend from today in this day and age, there are three to look for. I have a Nano VNA F that I really like, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. It's looks very much like this picture here, but this is among the later versions of the Nano VNA. There's an H4, there's an H4 Plus. So, but I would not get one from either eBay or Alibaba or Temu or any of those others. If you get one and it doesn't work right, if you get it from R&L or Gigaparts, they'll take care of you. So saving a couple of dollars up front is not always the way to go. So we're gonna look at this one. With a picture of it. They all have the same functional parts, but they look different. Here you see, we're going to talk about in the text. This is, they refer to these as, there are three different names for each of these connectors. They're called ports. If it's a port, you have port 1 and port 2. If they're channels, they're channel 0 and channel 1. Channel 0 is the same as port 1. And they're also known by the technical term of S11 and S21. S11 is the output, S21 is the throughput. So when you're just testing an antenna, you're just going to connect to the channel 0. But if you're testing something like a filter or a through device that you want to pass the signal all the way through to be able to look at loss, etc., then you use the both channels. And you'll see a lot of stuff on the screen here, and I'm going to show you how you can get rid of a lot of that to make it less confusing. But those of you who may recognize a Smith chart in the middle, you can display up to 4 different parameters at the same time. One can be a Smith chart. You can look at phase, you can look at loss, magnitude loss, you can look at SWR, and so the Smith chart can be there if you have that selected, and we can get rid of that to make it a little bit easier. But just for those looking at a Smith chart that don't understand, when you see a Smith chart, there's not a Smith chart talk. We need to have a week for that. But this middle line going through the Smith chart is 50 ohms, or the normalized impedance. You may not want to run 50 ohms. You may want to run your device at 72 ohms if you're running 72 ohms all the way through, and your device is 72 ohms. So you can change the reference point, but whatever that reference is, that's what this center line is going to be on the Smith chart. And when you see that circle come around, this is toward the generator. This is away from the generator, which is a signal source. And if you see your point that you're measuring at, your frequency in the bottom half, that means it's capacitive. And that means usually it's too short for what it's trying to do. If it's in the top half, it's inductive, and it's too long for what it's going to do. Now, when I say too long, you can correct for that by matching with something else to offset it. But that's basically the concept of a Smith chart. Now, remember, when we look at this device, we're in at the antenna analyzer. Everybody calls them antenna analyzers. They're really not. They're really transmission line analyzers. It just so happens you have an antenna sitting at the other end of your transmission line, maybe, or maybe not. But it really analyzes the entire length between your input and where the termination is. So it's really a transmission line analyzer, and that can be very helpful in certain kinds of tests. We're not going to go into tonight, but how you can use this to see how long your coax is, or where the break is in the coax. So you may find that your connector or your jumper inside is and it's really close. You don't have to go out and replace 200 feet of coax. So it can be very, very useful. So that's the picture of this, and of the four. That's a pretty good one. My favorite though is it's not the newest version, but it's this. It's not even it's a different series. This has actually different hardware, different firmware, different software, but it's in the same category, and it works really, really nifty. It's out of stock right now. It's up to 109. Before it went out of stock about 2 days ago, it was 89. So things are going up. But I paid more than that. It's come down a little bit, but they go up and down depending on what the sourcing is. But this is an interesting device in that on the others, almost all the others, you'll see I'm trying to get the picture. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's too big. Yeah, this one's too big. But you'll see across the top on this one that it has not little F connectors, but big N connectors. This is very helpful if you're trying to be very accurate, because this can go up to 3 gigahertz. So when you start getting high in frequency, that N connector is going to be your friend. Also, some use there are a couple of ways. We'll see in some pictures of the rocker switch to make it do its thing. It's got rocks right, left, or push down. This one and a couple of other types just have 3 buttons. That's what that rocker switch is doing. It's only pushing 3 buttons, and I kind of like the 3-button look. But it's the same. It's 4-inch screen, and the other cheap ones that are like $50 or $60 are 2.8-inch screens. So you probably are going to want to stop that, to change that out. So this is what I like to do. You can also go to Amazon and look at these as well. I would stay away from the $46 one. The H is probably good, depending on look at where the source is. You can never tell where Amazon source is going to be. This is the SAA2N, which is what we just looked at. Okay, here they have it for 149. What was it, 108 at R&L when they have it? So call them and see when they're going to get it in. This also has a very heavy-duty metal case, and it's really high-end and shielded. So it's I use this device. This is the one we're going to look at, and with our in fact, that's what's in the other screen right now is that one. But there are all different models, and I would go that way. Now let's go back to the beating. I found this one. This is again the way they operate are almost identical regardless of the model. There's slight changes. You may or may not get good documentation with these. So don't worry about that. There's a lot of stuff online. There's probably more YouTube videos on VNAs than anything I've found on YouTube. But that plus we've got some guys around. You get one, bring it to a meeting. We can work on it. We'll see some good stuff about it. So I like this one, this absolute beginner's guide. Just type that into the thing, but Nano VNA F manual, and these things come up. And this is what I was talking about. This is the top of them. It has a right, some will rock right and left. It's the same as those three buttons. They're the same thing. There's a switch. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's on the side. And sometimes it uses a USB-C, or occasionally you might have a micro USB for power. Don't be alarmed when the power light stays on after you've charged it. You unplug it, the light stays on. I don't know why. They all do. But don't let that bother you if you unplug it and from charging and the charge light stays on. It'll go off in a while. And you see, this is one of the models that I talked about, the cheaper models that don't even have a full case. There's a top plastic piece and a bottom plastic piece and nothing around the four sides. Those are some of the cheaper ones come that way. As we talked about the charging, calibration tool, you all know how to touch. Usually they're pretty good. You don't have to do anything, but if you are pushing the wrong spot and a wrong number comes up, then you might want to do a screen calibration. There's a place for that on the menus. So you can set that up and then save. Be sure to save after you do that screen calibration, just like with your phone or anything else. Touch calibration and the save. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay. How the VNAs work? It works just like any of the other analyzers. It sends out a signal, analyzes how long it takes to come back. It analyzes the inductance, capacitance, a lot of math, more than I even want to think about ever doing. This is not supposed to be a math test, and I'll tell you what, math. I only wish I could have done math. If I could do anything, I'd have gone back in school to high school and try to find a better math teacher, not an outside tutor. But device under test, you'll see these. You'll learn. Important to learn some of the nomenclature. A DUT is the device under test, regardless of that is whether it's a single port or one port in and one port out. The device under test is the DUT. So how do we get the measurement results? One thing to remember, these aren't analog, they are digital. And because of the size of the screen and the amount of power it takes to analyze, you only have 1 and 200 points across from one point to the other. So the wider the frequency range you make, the less resolution you're going to have. Does everybody know what I mean by resolution? If I take the whole HF band as one scan, it doesn't just sweep it like turning the knob on one of the old analog receivers. It just takes a lot of pulse samples all the way across. So I'm only going to get about 250 kilohertz resolution. Now that may be close enough to analyze your antennas and things, but if you want to get closer, you can do like you see here. This is 1.7 megahertz across this screen here. And so you get the 101 points across that 1.7 megahertz. So if you're looking at band by band, it's a lot better than looking at it. Now, if you go to UHF, it really doesn't matter if you're 100 kilohertz off or not on your antenna. And that's where it's really neat to look to see where your antennas are. Sometimes you're surprised, but other times I'm surprised how good they are, how flat they seem to be. Now, up top here, we'll see, this is what you're gonna look for. We're gonna get rid of a lot of junk, so you have the minimum, show you how to get rid of it, so you have a minimum amount of signals. Now, I'm using this, Dave's gonna use it with a computer. I usually use mine without the computer because I'm usually either in the field or carrying it out on a POTA, or I'm going to do a lot of running back and forth tests, changing antennas, adjustments. So I like to use the device itself, and I can get rid of all the excess stuff except what I'm looking for. I want it to have my channel 0. I want to measure SWR, and I want it to give me the SWR and the frequency at which it's measuring it at. That's what I normally want to see. Start. Now, if you're going to sweep it, you can set a start frequency and an end frequency, and it will go all between those frequencies. It can be within one band. It can be a whole band, 2 bands, 3 bands, and hopefully this will show you the. I have it hooked up to my 6B TV, and we'll look at the sweep across the whole 6B TV from 80 to 10 meters, and you can see what it looks like. Again, this is the channel we're using, the format, which I'll show you how to we'll select the scale, which I use 2. Depends on how, if you got a real low SWR like Angelo always has, then you could probably put 1. I put 2 because my SWR is often a little bit higher, and then the current value of it. Now here, if you don't get rid of some of the other things, you're going to see a lot of extra things, and that may or may not confuse you. So, okay. As I just said, very important. It doesn't generate frequencies continuously. So if you want higher resolution to see whether you want to be when it low at 14.2 or 14.3, then you want to make your sweep range lower. If your ports again, they say port 1 and 2, channel 0, channel 1. You're going to get one of these with whatever one you have. Go online and get a better, more detailed one for your machine. The problem is with all the different versions, this menu path will be different. So try to find one that matches. This will show with one, when you get into one range of the menu, how to get into the menu to get the function you want. To open a menu, the side menus, all you do is tap on the screen, and it'll pop up your list there, and you can pick the things you want to change. If I want to change my display, stimulus means what frequency I want to be operating on, whether it be for SWR or if I want to be analyzing a filter or something. So that's how I set my stimulus up. And under display, I'm going to show, hopefully, now, well, we'll see. Under display, it's going to give you what kind of what you're going to be looking at, whether you're going to look at SWR, at Smith chart, or whatever. Okay, let's traces. This is how we get rid of those traces we don't want. You click display and then trace. And as you tap on these, the color will disappear. And with that, the trace on the screen will disappear. So if I only want to see SWR instead of all the other lines on there, I just tap them until those are gone and only the SWR line remains. Okay. Now, when you're setting things up, whether it be the scale, as I said, I usually use 1, 2. You can use 1. In other words, how many units each one of these divisions is going to be. That's what the scale is. And this works the same way as if you're doing frequency. You can tap each one of these to make, if you want a division of 2, you'd hit 2 times 1, and then that would set it. If you want 1, it's 1 times 1. Now, if you're looking at stimulus or the frequency you're going to operate at. This is going to be important because that's how you're going to determine where you're going to operate. You would go to stimulus, and there are different choices. There's a start, an end, or you can put a center frequency and tell it how wide you want the sweep to be, how wide you want the measurement area to be. And when you get there, you just type the frequency, okay, 14250 00 kilohertz or 14.250 megahertz. And then this will clear and that frequency will be set. Every unit comes with a calibration set. It's important to calibrate. You can calibrate it and then save that calibration, and you'll be able to come back to it without having to do it every single measurement you make. It measures like any of these analyzers do the same thing. They look for open, shorted, and then load. They come with the 3 of these devices that screw on to the end, and that will give you, when you go to calibrate, it will, I want to give you the picture. Yeah. You go to calibrate, you reset the calibration, and then it's going to go like this. And you click open, and then when it's done, it'll jump down to here, short. You replace the open connector, and then you put the shorted connector on, hit that, and then it'll jump down to load, and then you put the 50 ohm or whatever reference you're going to be using on there and hit that again. Then it has isolation, which means you take it off, and then the connector's off, and then it says through, which means you take one of that same little jumper that you used, connect it from port 1 to port 2, and then hit that, and then you say done, and then back. So that calibration is important. And remember, you calibrate it. You do that with the cable you're going to be using. They all come with these little jumper cables. You've seen them. I'll show you one. And that, make sure that's on there with the load when you do these tests. Okay. Yeah, go down the line to different calibrations. And then you can save it. Depending on the model, the real cheap one might give you 1 save spot. Some of them give you 4. Okay, so let's an example of an SWR measurement. There are some sites, if I can find them here, and maybe I can throw them up someplace on the groups IO. It's like a little cheat thing. It gives you a little checklist thing for the different kinds of measurements you want to make. Now, the things might be slightly different depending on the model you get, but the functions are going to be the same. So this is what we're going to do to set up to measure. Okay, trace 0. We're going to use trace 0 for SWR. We're going to measure SWR channel 0. Format is SWR. So we go to display, we hit the display button. After those traces, those are called the traces with the colored things you're going to change. Look for SWR. If you want to see it with a Smith chart, you can hit Smith chart. It'll probably give you both SWR and Smith chart, but you hit SWR, and the Smith chart won't be in your way when you're going to look at what it is. Then you put in the frequency. Which is your stimulus. Either you can use the center frequency, like if I want to do it, I want to see what it is at 3950 kilohertz. That's what I want to see, and I only want to know for 100 kilohertz on either side. Well, you might miss it. You might be way off if you only give yourself that much room, but you can do that by hitting the center and then the span. So I would put 3.950 megahertz, and then I would do the span, come back again and pop this up and do span and say 200 kilohertz, 200K. And then here they're showing you they're doing 4.3. SWR and frequency will show up like this for that. So that's what you're going to see. But the neat thing is you can do this for a large range of frequencies, and this will work for anything from 50 kilohertz all the way to 3 gigahertz to check antennas. Okay, so I'm not going to host anymore. I'm going to go see if I can switch over to my other camera. Okay, so this is what it might would look like when you turn it on. Obviously, I'm probably not going to want to look at this for very long. Although what you're seeing there is that is my 6B TV. And if you look at the blue trace, that is the SWR on all the ham bands as we go up. Now, what I can do is go to display. And go to trace. And I can that's better, isn't it? So I can go. Where am I? You can see. I don't know if you can you see the little the number 1. Right now, this is at 40 meters. It's actually my now the little flag is right here. I'll find something that you can see. I don't know what would show up on in here or not. I can't see my screen very much. But right down here is the flag. It's right at a low point, and that's at 6.96 megahertz. Well, that's okay for me because I want to operate in CW and data part of the band, and that gives me less than 2 to 1 through all the way up through the data part of the band. So I leave it low. Most of mine are set low. And then the next one up will be 30 meters. I don't know if you can see the flag moving. And that's 30 meters. And that's pretty good. That's 1.12. Then next one is 20 meters. 20 meters and a 1.4 at 20 meters. And then 15 meters and 10 meters. 12 and 10 are pretty good. They're close to each other. They're both pretty low. So that's the sweep of a trap vertical. And that's what you can do with this, which you can't do with a regular SWR meter as much as I love them. If I was adjusting traps, this would be very helpful. Okay. If I wanted to change frequencies, as I said before, I would just hit stimulus and move my center frequency. So let's say I just wanted to look at 30 meter band. So I would say put my center. It lets me select a frequency, and I want to go 10.125 megahertz. And that moves that to the center. And you still see the sweep. Because I didn't change I just changed the center. So we're still, but now it's in the middle, right? Because that's the center. So you know your center frequency will be there, and that's the 30 meters. And that's pretty good SWR on 30 meters. Maybe that's why I get out so well. So now we centered it now on on the 30-meter band at 10.125, which is right there. And you see how low the SWR is. So the SWR is pretty good across. So we can make this wider or narrower. Let's say, so I got the center there. Let's say I want to make the whole. Okay, let me go back to this a minute. We saw what the trace did, right? If I want to add traces, or I can add traces back in if I want to. See, I can add Smith chart back in there. And if I was using a single band antenna, I would probably want to do that. So format is also important. Let me go back. SWR. See, the SWR is selected. I could select Smith chart, delay. Delay as if we're going to be, and then we have to use transform. There's another thing you have to set if you're going to use delay. And so many things we can do on here. You see the big connectors on this model. That's why I like these big end connectors. They're sturdy and they are constant impedance for high frequencies. You see the 3 buttons on the side here, over here. Pretty sturdy device. Now, I also mentioned the Nano VNA F, another model, which I have as well. It is very similar. It's also got a nice big screen on it. It's usually a couple of bucks cheaper. Not much. It has the old SMA connectors on it with the same 2 ports. But other than that, it's very similar. It has, I like the ones with 3 buttons rather than the rocker. I have one old one with a rocker on it. One of the original ones that came out about 5 years ago. Really tiny little thing. And neat thing on this F, actually, you can also use the battery to charge your phone. If you're out in the field, it gives you a USB there output. You can charge your phone, and the USB-C for charging and communication. But this USB is only for charging your phone. So it's a really handy guy. This is also a metal case. A lot of them are plastic case. This gives you a better shielding. Those of you who remember, I used the original little tiny one. These are good for more than just checking antennas. If you'll remember, when we did our antenna test for our handheld antennas, that we did way back there, we used I used a Nano VNA as the transmit source into the antenna, and it puts out enough signal to be able to be picked up for that pretty good distance. But it's also enough so that I can use it. We can use it to measure the relative abilities of the antennas. Okay, I kept this long enough. I'm going to send it over to Dave to show you how you hook this up to a computer, and you get a much prettier screen and save a lot better things. If anybody want to hang around or whatever with questions and talk about it after, let me know. I'll be here as always. And if you want, I can, if enough time, one of these times we can use one of these meetings to, I've been practicing showing JS8 on here too. So we can do that at another meeting, and we can get together and do it. Take it away, Dave.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen here. And whoa, that's what everybody see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Boom, it's gone. Okay, now you see my desktop. And the first thing you're going to want to do is find the software.
Take a swim.
Huh? Yeah, take a swim. And let's see, we'll bring up Microsoft Edge. And up here, we're going to do a search for Nano VNA saver. And you'll see a download option here. Now, they've done a nasty, nasty trick to us. Normally, you would go here and they'd tell you all about the Nano Saver program, etc. And you come down here and you see a download link. Unfortunately, they've updated the software. They've gone from 5 point something to 6.2 or 0.6.2. When they did that, they didn't make the binary or executable available, which is really sad. So they've got a new version out there. You can't get it. You go down here and you try to get the old level, you can't get it either. So right now, the only way that you're going to be able to get this software is from someone else. And we should be able to share the file via email. So if you don't have the software and you want it, shoot me an email and I'll email it to you. Now, once you download it, you'll come up with your file explorer. You'll see the downloads there. And right here is where I downloaded version 5 earlier. And there you'll see it, Nano VNA-saver.exe. It's 81 meg in size. So that might be a problem in emailing it, but all we can do is try it. But anyway, I'm going to click on it. And this will go here and boom, all of a sudden, you've got the program up. Now, you'll see that down here in the lower left-hand corner, you have port. On my machine, it's COM6. And it says also that I've got an H model, which I look on the back of my machine. And yeah, it's an H model. Let's see. You can't see that, but it's got the small screen with my hand in the way. And that's what it looks like. And I've got cables coming off of it. Well, I can't show you that right now. But anyway, I have cables coming off of it, hooking it up to an antenna. Anyway, back to the COM port. Now, if you had the program up before you plugged in your Nano VNA, you could hit rescan over here. See that highlighted? You click that and it'd show you the ports. Now, one thing nice about this, it's only going to show you the ports where it recognizes that there's a Nano VNA out there. So it's pretty hard to mess it up. Next thing you want to do is connect to device. Can everybody see my pointer and the connect to device?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, good. I'm going to click on that and it populates the screen. Now we got to go through the calibration, and it's really simple once you get everything done. You know, to get the software up. But anyway, we have the non-calibrated part right here. Now somewhere here, it says load calibration down here at the bottom. If I click that, it's going to bring up a little screen here, which is my file browser. I'm going to click on documents because that's where I stored my Nano calibration files. You notice I've got 2 of them here. One of them is new because I hooked up some different cables to it. So, and you'll even notice that the size of the file is different. So this is my newest and latest calibration. And you'll see that it's loaded 101 points. If you wanted to calibrate this again, you would click on Calibrate Assistant, and it would come through and tell you exactly what to do, what short, open, or load to put on what connector and everything. So it's sort of self-explanatory. I won't go through that because it's too simple. We need to do something difficult. So anyway, now that we've done the calibration, apply it, I guess, we can store that away. Now down here, we have display setup. If you click that, you get this screen. And down here, you have your choice of what you want to display. Now, for most of what I do, and I'm just checking out an antenna. I want to set up the SWR and whatever else and see how it's performing. So I've selected S11Z, Z is impedance, S11 SWR, and then return loss. And then there's S21, that's the gain that you might expect out of the antenna that you've got hooked up to it. Now you notice that you do have two more displays here. If I click on this, it gives me a lot of other things that I can do, including somewhere in here, the Smith chart. I'm not going to bring that up because it brings up it makes it too small on the screen. So I'm going to keep that at none. So we're only going to have 4 things we're going to look at. So we're going to store that away. Now you can see the 4 different graphs that we have. Now these graphs are set up with impedance here, and the way it's set right now is going to go from 60 down to 37. That's going to change. It's auto calibrating, if you will. This over here on the side is going to change depending upon what your scan is. And your SWR range is going to change. And over here, the important return loss. Okay, I'll explain that a little bit later, but anything below a -10 is considered satisfactory. The more negative you go, the better your antenna is. That means you have less loss. Now, let's go over here to the left-hand side, and here's sweep settings. We want to set this up so that we can do a single sweep. And if you want to name this so that you can save it and print it out and tell what you've done, you can put a name in here. Like you might be doing the 10-meter band. You can put up here 10 M gap DX Titan. That would tell you exactly what antenna that you were testing and what band. Then you go down here towards the bottom where it says select band, and you've got a lot of choices. Well, I'm going to start out with 17 meters because that is probably my best band on my particular antenna. Now down here, you can pad the limits. Now, if you're just setting up an antenna, you have no idea where you are. So you could select 10% overshoot, 25, or 100% if you had no idea where you were and you wanted to put more space on the end of the band. So you do that, do a set band, and you'll notice down here, it says we're going to scan from 17.97 to 18.27. Now, if we get out our handy dandy chart here that tells you what the bands are, 17 meters goes from 18.068 to 18.168. Well, that's going to more than cover the range that we want to do. Now, if we look up here in the upper left-hand corner, you see that start and that stop frequency again. I'm going to hit sweep. Well, I better store this away first. I'm going to hit sweep. And this shows me 17 meters on my Gap Titan DX antenna. Now, to get exactly where you want to be. Over here on the markers, I'm going to do it for, oops, I'm sorry, that's not right. 18.1, that's FT8 on the 17-meter band. So if I click here, boom, like magic over here, see this little triangle and another one down here and one over here? That tells me at that particular frequency on the curve, that's my results. So it's a little bit over 52 ohms, which is fantastic. The SWR is 1.3 or somewhere around that, and my loss is a minus 16 point something. Now, if we go over here to marker 1, it'll give you exactly what you've got. My impedance is 50.2. My SWR is 1.3. And my return loss is a minus 16. That is a good antenna. You're going to like that. I mean, it's hard to get any better than that. To prove that point, let's go to sweep settings again. And let's change this to 20 meters. I'm going to save that at 100%. Set to sweep. Come over here. My sweep settings are wide again. Starts below 14 megahertz and goes above 14.7. Now that's covering outside of the band. But if you've got a new antenna, it might be resonant way outside of the band. If I click on sweep here, boom. Now all of a sudden we got a different picture. And if I want to see exactly where I stand, I can go to 14074 if you're doing FT8 again. Click on this button. Well, I missed it a little bit there. Let's make that a 4. Close enough. Anyway, you'll see my impedance is down to 30.9 up here. My SWR, though, is a 1.6, which the SWR says, hey, it's not bad. The impedance, to me, is a lot lower than what I would like. And when you take those two numbers and you mash them into a magic formula, your return loss turns out to be a minus 12, which is acceptable, but not optimum. You could do a lot better by trimming this so that this dip right here is closer to this right here. So if you want to trim your antenna, this will give you a good idea. But still, you'll notice that your impedance is going to be down. So the way to correct that is playing with the antenna, the measurements. But again, for 20 meters, and you're sitting at a minus 12 loss, that's acceptable, but you can do better. And you do that by trimming your antenna. Or if you want your impedance to stay in the 50 ohm range, pardon me, what you would do is get a one-to-one balun. If this is a dipole antenna, which mine is, if I got a one-to-one balun where it's matched to 50 ohms and it expects 50 ohms on the other side, it would help bring this impedance up, which would help your overall equation so that your return loss would be less. That's one of the ways to fight that problem. Now, another interesting thing that you like to play with, we know what it looks like on 20 meters and 17 meters. Just for the heck of it, let's go to 10 meters. Got that 100% overshoot again. Set the band limits. Kill that. And you'll notice that over here, we've got 26 and 31. Well, if you look at 10 meters, the band goes from 28 to 29.7. That's a lot of overshoot. But, what the heck? Let's do a sweep on it and see what we get. Now this is an interesting one. This shows impedance going all over the place. If we come over here, and again, we want to set this up for me, which is FT8, and which would be good for CW also. Click on that. Uh-oh. It's fighting me. Probably because I didn't do something right. 28.074. There we go. Okay, now the reason why it didn't do 074 over here is because we're in between the dots. So it has to take a dot that's in the plot. And the closest one to 074 is 085. Close enough for government work, right? Anyway, you'll see that our impedance is 28.8, which is, well, a little lower than I would like. The SWR is 2. It says here that our return loss is a -9. If we go over here, yeah, it's -9. So this is below acceptable. So we want to do something to make this dip here actually come up so that we're up around the 50 ohms somewhere. So we need to trim this antenna. We need to tune it. And that's because on this particular antenna, my counterpoise is not tuned too good. So I'm lazy. I haven't been out there and changed it, but it shows you an example of how wide your impedance can go and how your loss can get better and better as your SWR goes down, and hopefully your impedance goes up. So this, on 10 meters, this antenna needs some work. But now for something that's interesting. You always wonder, exactly what can you tune your antenna to? Now this antenna is supposed to be good for 6 through 80. I'm going to go to 2 meters just for the heck of it. 100%, set the band sweep. And now you'll notice over here, we've got 142 to 148. Well, 148, that's not going to happen because the 2 meter band goes all the way up to 148. Okay. But we don't need that big of a range, but we're going to do it anyway because we know that the antenna is not supposed to work on 2 meters. We're going to sweep. How about that? Let's go over here to the marker and let's see. The 146.745. 146.745. That should sound familiar. That's the 2 meter side of our repeater. Okay, that right there, look at that. It says if we come over here, our impedance is 52.8 ohms. Our SWR is 1.5 essentially. And our loss is a -14. Well, shoot, this antenna should work on 2 meters, but it's a ground mount antenna. And that's going to make it a little difficult because I know from my location that the hospitals in Port Charlotte are line of sight between me and the repeater. So they're going to cut back on my ability to get in the repeater from this particular antenna. Now, if I'm 20 feet higher, full quieting, no problem. But I've got a rig here set up. It's a Quansheng or whatever it is. So I can hook it up to any antenna I want to. And I hooked it up earlier to my ground mounted gap antenna. And I could get into the repeater and there was a little bit of hiss there. It wasn't full quieting, but that's only 5 watts and a ground mounted antenna. So that's just an interesting thing. Now, if you had this antenna elevated at 20 or plus more feet on a mast of some kind, it might get into the repeater full quieting and be great. And looking at the specs on it, yeah, you can't ask for much more out of a 2-meter antenna. But let's play some more games. Let's go back to sweep settings. And a lot of you like to use 440, right? That's 70 centimeters. So let's play that game too. What the heck? Set the band sweep, kill that, come over here. Then you'll notice over here, it says 426 to 444. Well, if you look at our 440 machine, you go here, and that's below where we want to be. So let's change that to 446 and do a sweep. And bang. Now that's a wide range. We've got, what is it? 20 megahertz of only 110 or 100, 101 points. So you can see that everything doesn't look like a nice little graph over here for the impedance. But if you look at the performance and return loss, hey, that's pretty good. And look at the SWR. Well, let's go over here and get a little more exact on it. Let's go to, on our marker 1, 44, yeah, pardon me, I gotta look, 444.975. And we're playing games again.
I understand that it's some work on the radio installation.
And that puts our marker right here. And that says that our impedance is 43. Our SWR is 1.3. Our loss is minus 18. Well, that'd make a heck of a good 70 centimeter antenna too, if it were elevated enough to have line of sight to the repeater. But that's some of the games that you can play. Your antenna is probably better in places where you didn't expect it to be. So we'll do one more little game here just for the heck of it. Let's do the sweep settings again. And let's pick, you can see we can go all the way up to 2,200 meters, but let's pick 40 meters, okay? And 40 meters, I'll get out my magic chart again, make sure that we're going to check where we want to be, is 7 to 7,300. So, okay, yeah, we're within range there. If we do a sweep, there's what we get. Now we want to come over here again and change our marker. Make that 074 again and click on it. And our impedance, 43, that's acceptable. Our SWR though is 3.1. At 3.1, you're going to lose over 20, I think it's 25% of your power. And that's indicated by your return loss, a -5. That's right here. That is unacceptable. I mean, it'll work because your SWR is down. You can load it up. Your impedance is fairly decent, but look at that loss. So on 40 meters, my antenna, well, basically it sucks. But you can tell by the dip here where optimum is. So I just need to go out there and tune that again. I tuned it up one time, and then the windstorm came along and tilted it over and a little bit, and things got out of whack. But anyway, if you wanted to print this out, you would use a screen capture tool or a snippet tool or something like that. Capture the screen or what part of it that you want. More than likely, you'd want to reduce the size of this to a window that you can play with. And if I remember right, it's let's see, Alt Shift S. No, Control Shift S. Yeah, it's not going to work. I forget what the snippet tool is. But anyway, by using a screen capture, you can print these out, save them in a book, and you know, there you go. I mean, see, let me make that for. Are there any questions about how to control this? The installation of the program is very simple. You just execute the binary file or that Windows executable, whatever you want to call it, and it takes care of everything itself. There's no config file to go through. You just execute it after you've unzipped it, and away you go. It's self-generating. You know, it's binary code. It does its thing. Anyway, any questions?
I have one, Dave. This is Greg.
Sure.
I have one that is USB and a USB-C. The newer models are the different models, and I'm not sure whether you covered it or not, but from somebody from a brand new standpoint, connecting this and getting it to a COM port, USB to USB or some USB to USB-C cables that on the newer models, or are they all USB?
Everyone that I've seen, the device itself has a C connector on it, USB-C. Now mine came with a cable that goes to a regular USB connector. So you'd plug that directly into your USB port on your computer. The COM port is built into the device. So as soon as you plug it in, Windows will recognize it and take it.
Alrighty, and that's something they need to purchase additionally when they purchase their meter. Usually it doesn't come with one, right?
Mine came with one. That's one of
Okay.
the things when you order it, make sure you get the desired cables, because I've heard that there are some cheapies out there that come with no cables and some that have only half the cables you need. But mine came with a whole assortment of cables.
I'd like to,
Go
we're
ahead.
looking for, to make sure on the USB cables to the USB-Cs or the USB micros, they're called on-the-go cables. On the go, in other words, it lets you know that it does have the data as well as just charging wires in it. Some of those cheaper ones don't have the data. They only have a charging wire.
Well, that's a good point, Dave. Yeah, those cables, there's 3 different cables. There's one that's charging only, there's one that's data only, and there's a third one that's both. And you want both because you need a way of charging that Nano VNA. And also, you know, the port on your computer, it has to be able to charge the device. It has to be able to supply power. And there are some ports that do not supply power on the computers.
Dave,
Yes.
just right click on that SWR chart.
The SWR chart.
Yeah, the one, yeah, just right click on it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you can save.
yeah, but you should be able to print it from there. I can't see from on your screen, but
It doesn't save, it just says save image.
yeah, on mine, I can print it right out from there. Just right click it and print it.
Yeah. Well, that might be a different rev level of software. I've got the latest software, and I know that the previous version software did have some features that this one doesn't have. And then on the other hand, this one has some features that the other one didn't have. So it depends upon the software that you get.
There's a lot of different software out there. Also, there are a lot of people going to try to get you to, just like these Guanshangs, oh, we've got this new firmware to throw in. This will do great things for you. Always be a little bit careful about where your sources of your firmware when you're going to try to upload new firmware into these devices.
Yeah, I've never, I've
Yeah.
never downloaded the new firmware for the Nano VNA that I have. It performs and does what I want it to do, so I haven't messed with it.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's not
Yeah.
broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got one other image. If someone look at, I've got on my on my Nano now. I've got put that video. If we get, I don't know if the video screen, if we wanted to show it, that just 20 meters going, and with the Smith chart on going through my manual tuner, and you can. It's easy to do that. Okay, if you see there, we're just right now on 14.078, which is my favorite frequency on 20 meters. It's a JS8 frequency. And you can see the SWR is, the native SWR is 2.35 to 1. And there you also see it. This is the help with the Smith chart. You can see all this at once in one little glance, even without a computer. It shows me, it's below the line. Okay, so it's a little capacitive. So it shows, if you look up there, the impedance is actually 188 ohms, and with 460 PF. So it's in bypass. Now I'm gonna put the tuner in, and you see the manual tuner, which has been tuned. Now I'm down to 1.18 to 1. And I'm down to 1.5 nanofarads of capacity. So it shows there's the tune, and you can, as I tune the tuning on the manual tuner, you can see I can bring the affect the SWR. So this is a way you could use a manual tuner and the Nano to optimize your antenna. And that's what I do for my radios that don't have tuners, like the little QRP radios. You can use that if you don't, use one of the old MFJs. But this is a way you can to play with your Nano. If you have a manual tuner, you can play with your Nano by adjusting the inductance and the capacitance, and see the changes and readings. And it's a kind of a neat thing to play with. That's all I wanted to show.
any more questions? Everybody going to be able to tune their antennas now?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Dave and Dave. In my limited experience, the Nano VNA is as important part of my toolkit as a soldering iron or a crimping tool. And it's just a whole lot of value for the money as far as a piece of equipment.
Yeah, for the price and a computer program, or just learning how to manually control the thing, you can sit here and like I'm testing out my coax, my antenna, and everything. If something's wrong, I could pick up the device and take it out to the antenna and plug it in out there. I would more than likely, well, what I do is I take my laptop computer out there with me. I've got the program set up on it also, and I can play all the games I want to with the Nano VNA out there at the antenna. And if you have a good starting point there, when you bring it in the house and use it in place of your rig, you're also checking out the coaxes. So if you've got a coax problem, that's how you figure it out. I mean, if you're just doing it in the house, you don't know for sure if you have a coax problem or an antenna problem or both. So you have to segment it. So you go out and check out the antenna, and if it's fine, go in the house. And if you have problems, you have a coax problem.
Right. Yeah, and I've been reading some of the strategies on how to calibrate out the coax effect and then to come back and look at it, because coax, if I understand correctly, can actually act as a transformer in some cases. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, if you've got a dirty coil out there, that's going to be reflected in your Nano VNA analysis. Or if you inadvertently had a lot of excess cable, say you had a 100-foot coax, but you only needed 25 and you coiled it up on the ground, that could be a problem.
Yep.
And some antennas, especially long wire antennas, you need a minimum of 70 feet of coax to balance out the antenna so that it'll work right. It acts as a counterpoise in a matching network.
Mhm. Yep. All good stuff. I'd be lost without one, especially for wires.
Yep. Yep. Another thing that I've found that's sort of nice that you can get, but you get them from China and it takes a long time to get them. But this little guy right here, field strength meter. I'll tell you what, I had a G5RF antenna out there. Looked like it was working pretty good. It passed all the Nano VNA test as far as SWR and so on, but I just wasn't getting out good. And I just couldn't figure it out. So I got this little field strength meter, went out there and checked it and found out that half of my dipole antenna wasn't working. It's because of a cold solder joint. So I resoldered the joint, it started working, and holy cow, that wasn't a decent antenna. But I was working with half an antenna, and even the Nano VNA couldn't tell me that.
Yep. Yep. And especially when you start working down into QRP levels of transmit power, you know, you literally have to do everything you can to get every watt to leave the property.
Well, looks like another piece of equipment I'm gonna have to buy.
Yeah. This one won't cost you a well pump though, Jack. You're good.
Hey Dave, you think we can try to upload that Nano VNA Saver software to the Groups IO page? There's a post on the members only section, and maybe we could upload it there where other people could pick it up.
That would be a good idea because right now, like I said, it's for some reason they're not releasing the new version. They took the old versions off. And the only thing I can think is that maybe somebody bought the rights to the program and they're going to try to sell it now.
Right. That'd be great if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll attempt that tomorrow. But anyway, it's a handy dandy program, and it gets the job done. It's simple to install. You just put it somewhere and execute it. Anyway, if there's no more questions, we probably can call it a day on this meeting.
Well, I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you and Dave.